I'm Sarah Jones. I've been doing the AUD configuration implementations for the last 11 or 12 years now. I've since kind of moved up into more of a management mentor role. But I did kind of want to say my name's been dropped a couple times today, or in yesterday, whatever. And I just want to say, like, behind my name, there really is a wonderful and experienced team of configurers that are, part of the solutions and implementations that we do. So as part of just kind of looking over the different solutions we've done over the last year, I want to kind of introduce those people. Some of their names have also been, dropped from a company-wise, but so I'm going to be focusing on that a little. But I just kind of want to say that out because everyone always like, oh, Sarah did this wonderful thing, but Sarah and a bunch of really great configurators, as a team. So I'm going to talk about two different things. So I do want to touch on the SBS base configuration, which is our kind of starting point template and what we've done over the last year or so. And then I'll kind of jump into a number of different examples of, just fun solutions for you to kind of take in and see what AUD can do. And it's nothing like super complicated in any sense. It's, just kind of those little things that really help the design process. So the base configuration is, like I said, it's our starting point template. But what it is we took the out-of-the-box template, and actually this was me and Chuck a couple years ago now, and we decided we needed to upgrade it because the out-of-the-box is using really, really old rules, and there wasn't for each loops and things like that really make the configuration a lot smoother. So we converted all the old rules where needed to more standard practices and providing examples to configuration on how to do things. Because if you've ever tried to write rules or if you're trying to figure it out, there are so many functions in there. And it can be challenging to understand how to set something up. And so the base template includes a lot of things like that where maybe it's not necessarily useful everywhere we take it to, but it provides the example of how to do things. So that's part of it. Another part is that we do try to take common requirement and design practice type information from all of the customers we work with, and we try to solution it in a way that now we can take it from place to place. And again, the configurator doesn't have to keep rewriting the same solution over and over again to speed up the process as much as we can. So that's what the base config is, kind of in a nutshell. If you have questions about it beyond that, feel free to come talk to me about it. So this is all the updates we've done from January until August. Some of these are defects and things we found. There's, updates, upgrades, new solutions, changing things around, that type of thing. I'm not going to go over this list, but I just kind of wanted to let you know that we're constantly working on it and making it better all the time. And then just a couple enhancements I want to call out because I also talk about this word called modules. And I dropped it maybe last year, and it's something we're still kind of working on. But basically, it's taking a full solution. So if you take that top one, for example, pole leveling, and instead of putting it into the base template because it's not exactly going to work well with everybody, we create kind of a mini project that just has that included in it. And that way, if someone's like, yeah, we're going to do leveling, it has the rules, all the tables, all the attributes you would need, and things like that. And we just kind of put it into this little folder. Then we can take it and pull it around, right? Again, just to speed up the process. Let's not keep repeating the same solutions over and over again. But I wanted to call out a couple of these. So over the last year, pole leveling, I've worked, and I will say because I spent a lot of time with this, taking the out of the box, and I wanted to turn it around so that it's easier for you, the client, when you take over your config, to be able to update the out leveling it out of the box. And let me just shift over here to that slide. it can be really daunting when you go in there. You're looking and you're like, oh, it's kind of like comparing the first feature to the second feature, and then it compares voltage and it does all this stuff. It makes the rules really difficult, and then also makes it hard to figure out, well, if you want to make a change, where and how do you do that? So through actually a couple implementations I did, I was able to take that and turn it around to be more table-based. And you'll hear me say that a lot if you talk to me about configurations, and the way to try to make it easier when we turn it over is don't have so much stuff hard-coded or make the rules. The rules can be somewhat complicated, but try to put things where the client's going to need to update, put it in a table, right? It's so much easier to update a table than try to go search in some rules somewhere. So this is just an example of the before rule and the after one. So hopefully, yeah, that's pretty good. So just like the last line in there, all it does is compare two numbers together. So instead of some convoluted rule that's looking at voltage and type and whether it's a tap or a dual circuit or whatever, that all lives in a table. Nice true falses. And all that does is return a number. So this should probably back up. When you do leveling, AUD prioritizes everything on the pole so it knows what's up top and all the way down to the bottom. So instead of trying to, so I assign each feature a number. So smaller number, higher it up on the pole. So it just really simplified making this work and making it so that other configurators that aren't as familiar with running the engineering or like the full understanding behind it, they can set it up, and then it's easier for you to maintain. Hopefully that makes sense. I did want to show that I think I have the table up as well. So just to kind of give you an idea then, so there's two tables to get priority. One is a group, because there's always a way to say, it's usually by voltage, but this kind of allows you to create groupings of features, and it assigns it a group, and then from there, it goes through and says, okay, within that group, here's the order. If everything was on the pole, here's the order that it would be. And you can kind of see, it's like, is it a top of the pole type of feature, right? Is it a pole top pin, or is it an aerial neutral? Is it a tap, a dual circuit? Is it spacer, secondary, neutral, communications, etc.? So it gets it, again, out of the rules, into a table, so that if you needed to reorder, all you have to do is come and reorder this table. Add a new group, add it to this table, right? So that kind of thing. So another thing I wanted to point out, and I know some of this is definitely along the lines of like being an admin for AUD, but an enhancement that was, I don't know, maybe it was 8.1 now, I can't remember exactly, but it was introduced that we could create our own what's called analysis settings, or you might hear them called feature handlers. And really what this is it allows you to create your own rule sections, order them so they run in a certain order, which is how you speed up the configuration process. So this is just showing in the out of the box, there used to be one. Well, I mean, all these other things do their own stuff. So I'm kind of talking about validation here, which is all the automation, setting attributes, validating messages, etc. So there used to just be validation, and validation always ran like second in the order. So like sizing would run, it'd have to go back and run validation. If it hit a notice, I'd have to go back to validation. And you end up kind of why you see the system run sometimes when you're sitting there, like, why is it taking forever to validate? And a lot of times it's because the order things are happening makes it so that it has to keep going back and, checking this, do this other thing and go back. And this kind of demonstrates where the ones in the red box, like those are all new analysis settings that we added to base config to break up the logic so that we can actually move certain things around where they make more sense. If something relies on the model name being set, for example, you wouldn't want it before sizing. It should be after sizing. So you can prioritize these. And I wanted to show both of these because in the rules it's just alphabetical order. But when you look at where you check boxes on and off, and that top down is how the validation is running. So if you weren't aware, of that concept or like how that actually works with an AUD, and so that's why this can just be super important to the efficiency of configuring your template. Another benefit of this is it gives you a much more granular control over what's running. So if any of you guys are using modes or are familiar with the config modes, where you can have like a sketch mode and an estimate mode, analysis mode, whatever, you can now say, well, I don't want phasing validation to run in sketch mode, but I want to orient, the rotation and orientation one. But if you put that all in general validation, you're pretty much stuck. It's all running, or you're going to have to write some very complicated if statements. So to me, those are like two really big benefits to the designer and your process for, the full process for designing. For us as configurers, another benefit is we can pull that set of rules out if we had to, much more easily. We don't have to go in and, I don't know, try to find it and piece it all together. So it's a very useful thing. And if you're not, if you're already implemented and you're currently struggling with your drawing taking forever to validate, this might be something worth looking into. And it's really easy to move the rules around and everything between these. So if you want to know how to set them up, tomorrow we're doing those breakouts and I can go over how to create a new analysis handler. Super easy. So one of the last things I wanted to just point out was we recently added attribution to, we're calling it UN enabled. And this was just because there's a certain set, which you kind of see up in the front, and then there's some model attributes that go along with this where it's consistent when you're doing an UN implementation. So kind of, again, to help our new customers if they're doing UN implementation, the configurer doesn't have to remember to go in and add these attributes, or they get misnamed, or they miss being on the model table, and it kind of puts it right in your face, as far as like getting it filled in. But the other part is, again, for helping us move things along faster. And another example of this would be, I'm going to say work request, but that would be job notification, work order, whatever, right? It's like the thing you do when you link to a design is also something we do every single time. And instead of making someone have to re-solution it or implement it, we build it right in to the base config. All right, well then let's get into solution highlights. So get to the slide. UDC, who's here from UDC? So there's that group over there. I guess before I do jump in, so this is mostly about AUD configuration, so the template. So we have all of our partners help implement all the other aspects of the implementation. So they do the EAM, the GIS, and training. So the ones that I'm kind of calling out here are ones that work with the AUD team specifically, but I'm not trying to leave anyone out. Just want to say that up front. But so with UDC, I picked out a couple things to show. This particular one is using a table, AUD table, with a workflow. So the requirement here was that there needed to be a table that shows the structures, their work location, and then a lat long, but the coordinate, but the coordinate can change. And in their current system, they had a window that let them select a certain coordinate, and then it generated the table. And so how are we going to do that in AUD? AUD workflow. So I just started off with a group of polls. Let's see if I can get down to my button. Actually, what I need to do is create work locations real quick. This was actually in my list as well. So I've got like 4 different work location workflows. Create, update. So this is actually going to be adding work locations to each point feature. And then in this particular one, they do like 1-2 and 2-3 for the conductors. So instead of like some of the ones where you see with yeah,
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
Is everybody familiar with the tool panel over on the right? Are people using the tool panel? Is that part of your configuration? Tool palette. I'm sorry.
Tool palette.
Tool palette. Are you seeing folks use it very often?
Me? No. I mean, they might have their ones from before that they keep using for like AutoCAD drops, but I think I almost implemented it for Hydro and then for the cost collector stuff, but we switched it over to a ribbon. It was easier. I think that's the closest I've ever got.
AUD commands, I mean, when you click on something, it is just running an AUD command, and those AUD commands can be strung together and put onto tool palettes. So while you were clicking over on the right, I was just curious if other people had been using them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I just loaded a button click that's normally part of the client's ribbon, but I just moved it off. So I do that all the time with the tool palette personally. But so what this is doing is running the AUD workflow command, which has the workflow I want built in, so I don't have to, the user doesn't have to like find it through that list you saw me do just a second ago. So here's a prompt. So instead of a window with workflows, you can use keyword prompts just like AutoCAD. And so here I can select one of the coordinates, and then it immediately takes me into the AUD table, which also pre-selects the table I want. I place it, and I get the table. So I'll do it again just so you can kind of see the difference, know that I'm not fibbing it. So I'll do that one. Don't even have to select anything, right? And then I get to drop the table, and you can see it's a different set of XY. So the AUD workflow, it doesn't let you call other commands. I actually wish it let you do that a little bit. But so simply enough, this is just stringing two commands together. But it's easier for the designer. It's familiar to what they're used to doing from before. And, just one of those things you can do with workflows that is much harder to do with validation. So that was one thing. So the next thing, also from UDC, was in another workflow, is a gas workflow for abandoning pipe. So they created two workflows, which prompts you for 2 clicks, and it splits the existing pipe into 3 sections. The in-between turns into abandon, put some end caps on there. So let's go do that one. AUD workflow. We'll do the section pipe abandon workflow. And so here I am with the prompt, select a pipe. Select, and now it's prompting me for the first click break. Click there. Second one, click. And there's the result. So you end up, if you were doing this manually, you'd have to do 2 clicks for the break, select the center, change the status, then 2 more clicks for placing the extra end cap. So with just running the workflow and pipe selection, 2 clicks, you get all that. So the other one, AUD workflow, the end pipe abandon, which is very similar, except for this one, instead of in the middle, this is specifically used for the end of a pipe. And they made it actually is really neat. So if I was zoomed out a little bit, I didn't snap to the end of the pipe, but they were able to work out still kind of finding that nearest point to get, or didn't actually quite look at the rule, but it's finding the end point of the line, and even though I kind of clicked not very specifically. So, there's just more examples here of like what you can really do with the workflow, and it's just to try to ease that manual steps that you might have to take otherwise. All right, next, power engineers, where are you? So the couple things here is, again, we're going to be looking at some workflows and some other things that those guys have been doing. So the first one is called Conductor Shredder, and the requirement is that the conductors have to be tapped at every pole, but there doesn't need to be an electrical device at that pole. So instead of either needing to place it with junctions and do a manual tap, making sure stuff gets connected, it's all done in validation. So this actually isn't a workflow. It's done through the validation, which kind of allows you some of the same things, but this time it's happening on Digitize. So I'll bring that up so you can see. Lost my, I went from white to black. Yeah, I was going to tell Pat, so sorry, I had to use a black background. But so let me just bring this up too, so you can kind of see like how you can tell that it's working. In feature info, you all know about the FIDs. And so you can see like in between these two poles, here's a conductor and it's got, 5877 and 5941. That's two separate conductors. So if I go to draw, electric, I'll just do a 3-phase. Do 3 spans, and so just clicking through. So if you're familiar, right, if you do that, it's usually 3 spans unconnected. So I'll hit enter. I promise it's not this slow. I did it like 5 times yesterday, so it's just sharing in the internet my stuff. All right, so there we have our pull line, and if I select now each conductor, if you look at the FIDs there's 9757 and 9821. So this is really neat because like I think a big thing about this with pointing out is you need an electrical device to tap an electrical line, a conductor. And so what's really neat about this is the electrical device gets auto-created, it taps the line, and then the validation, in these steps, then deletes the electrical device, which is great because you want to like limit the number of features you have to see in feature info, right? And it just floods the design, and it's just not necessary, right? So I think that's a pretty awesome solution to that problem. Yeah. It's primary. So, from an AUD standpoint, it's not bad or anything, but that's all I know. Well, that's why I'm pointing it out, right? We can talk to power engineers if you're curious more on, the more granular aspects of the solution. All right, so the next one is also another, so kind of back to workflow, so you can see more of what you can do there. So this actually is a regulator platform workflow, and funny enough to me, within like 5 days, I had 3 different people show me their regulator workflows, and they're all really neat, actually. I'm probably going to steal that one for base configuration because it seems like it's something we should definitely have. You need 2 poles, regulators, switches, right? It's kind of a complex set of features that you would have to do manually otherwise. So I'll bring that up. Okay. Line devices, and we can see 3-phase rack mount regulator, and even the description, place 2 new poles with 3-phase rack mounted regulator. And just like before, I'm being prompted for the first new pole, and then select the point for the second pole, and then the workflow runs, takes those click points, turns them into poles, and then adds the necessary equipment to each one. And of course, since this is overhead and those are poles, I should say that this is also like breaking the segments and things. So you're getting, all the overhead, the other overhead types of validation running along with it. Cool. And that's the result. And we can select it over in feature info so you can see that we have, our pole, created the regulator, the switch, and then the other pole had to just have the pole tops created. So another really good use of the workflows. All right, who's next? So TRC, Critigen, you guys are over there, right? Yeah, hello. So a couple things from there. This one is about work locations and also kind of the being able to try to sort things in a certain way. This is not workflows or anything. This is about creating a very specific sort. So the one I wanted to show you was not only does this client need to see their features by position Z in overhead, they also have what we decided to call major and minor features. So I'll show you in the drawing when I do it, but you can kind of see how there's indented things. Those are not units of that feature necessarily. So we had to, grounding is a regular feature. It's not contained by the regulators. It's also on the pole, but we considered a minor feature to the regulator. So it has to show up indented under there. So there was that, and then I want to show this regulator one because there's an incoming pole and regulator and an outgoing pole and regulator, and those have to be in order as well. Bring that up. Okay, hopefully I can do this one good. So I just wanted to show also kind of putting this regulator in because it's a little different than the one that I was just showing with the workflow. So we're going to put in another pole here. Oh, underground. Need to be overhead. Break the pole line. Let's zoom in a little bit. So these need to be on the same work location. So before I go any further, I'm actually going to move this pole onto the other work location. So notice that work location 5 happened automatically. So it's another solution to creating work locations versus the other one, which was using a workflow. I'll switch it over. All right, and under regulators, if they have their in regulators and out regulators, which did make that kind of nice, easy to figure out it in the rules. So we'll digitize that on the first pole. Cool. And so what this implementation did for the regulators, which still could be done in a workflow, honestly, to get them both in there. But they added this is actually the switch. And so this is actually a pretty nifty dynamic block. So if you wanted to, bring the sides in to where you wanted, however they have to have it look on their construction prints. And looking at the work location so far, so you can see I already have my incoming. Here's the regulator feature itself. The pole head is right there. The earthing, the grounding, earthing for Australia, is a separate feature, like I said, but we auto-create it through the regulator so that we can associate the grounding to the regulator, and that's how we know to nest it under the regulator, say, versus the switch, which is this air brake switch. All right, so there's some like work location things. So another one I thought was worth demonstrating was this trench call out. So what's different about this is it's not the trench detail. It actually is showing which expanded, like in the order the lines were expanded, which is not the way they're laid out in the trench for real. They have a call out showing which line, expanded top down, or if it's flipped, it'll be the other way. And so there's really not a clean way to figure out like which one's at the top and then if you want it sorted. So we came up with a workflow actually that once the call out is placed, you run the workflow and it just says click them in order, and you just click the way you want to actually see them. So it was kind of a neat solution. It's still a little manual because, alternatively we were like, should we put IDs on it? But then like, what if the IDs are wrong? And then you have to go to the feature attributes to fix it. So we actually still use the feature attribute, but with the workflow, it just kind of eases the burden of having to click through and try to hand type something in feature info. Okay, so I've got, I already placed the call out, expanded the lines out. You can see it's tied to the trench. So AUD workflow, it's not a button ready for this one. Segment line order, and now it's prompting me for the segment. We'll do below, and then so position 1 prompt, position 2 prompt, 3, and then 4, and it automatically stops because based off the segment, we know how many contained lines there are, so I don't need to like end it. It knows. And then when it's done, since callouts are dynamic, based off of the update, they show up. So this is a neat little command. Wasn't too bad, but just like a solution to something that would otherwise be pretty challenging, without being able to do a workflow. So Smith Configuration Services, this is Matt Smith. I'm sure some used to work for Atwell, still actually works kind of through Atwell, and worked, this is another workflow for gas, where, again, there's a lot of features that needed to be placed at once, so instead of having to do each one at a time, you click the workflow, and it does all these like features for you. Okay, get the gas tab. Okay, so this is an existing pipe, and then this is a new pipe. And we have a create standard tie-in fitting, and click that. It prompts for the existing source pipe. Asks which kind. I'm going to do the first one, and then it says select the branch pipe. And again, I didn't have to hit enter. Once it hits done with the prompts, it finishes everything. Placed the work location, and then added the necessary features for the fittings. So it's an easier way to try to get that done. All right. Oh, see my time. The last Atwell, raise your hands. Where are you at? This one from Atwell is about segment callouts, and also kind of has an AutoCAD dynamic block, using colored sortings in the rules. This is not a workflow or anything, so this is just kind of another setup where you use the rules to provide the right solution. Get in there. Okay. So first off, and it's with the work locations, knowing now that we have our update, some of this may become a little bit more obsolete, but still. So notice I have a listing over here. And so for this particular client, they needed the ability to easily turn off the notes and turn them back on. And without being able to select the work location and set some attribute, using just the regular AutoCAD dynamic visibility, hopefully I'm getting that right. I can drop this down, and normal just brings the text in versus taking it out. So, but what's nice about that, even with the enhancement, it's right there on the features. So it's always good to look for those more simple, like AutoCAD out of the box implement, solutions to things. Not everything has to be AUD and automated. So the other piece of this is the call out that is actually both of these are on the segment. So this is actually two separate call outs. They needed one that's just the conduit and then another one that is the conductors. And so you can see that they're sorted by their status and colored appropriately. And so this is not a bunch of block attributes that are inside this block. It's a one multi-line using list functions in the rules and then providing mtext color codes to color each line as they need to be. I suppose I should place it, but you guys have placed call out, so I probably don't need to do that. How am I doing on time? 10 minutes?
Better than your dark screen, but other than that.
Hey, you're right here. Time out. There's so much yellow in these implementations. It looked really bad. I had to go back to black. Okay, full disclosure. So that's kind of the end of the configuration things I had. I did actually want to show one other thing I forgot when I was going through the base config, and then I can take any questions or whatever. Let me close them because this is tried to zoom in so we could see them. But I can do it from here. Let's see. Yeah. So this is something that's built in now to the base template, but it's actually also a module, and I think it's really beneficial. We end up implementing variations of this, I think, more recently. It utilizes forms, which, first they seem like they could be complicated. It's really not once you get used to them. But what this implementation, or what this solution is, this module, is additional materials. So I realize you can just go to the catalog and type in materials and add a bunch and then manually set work locations and things. But sometimes we really want to have a place at the work location or on the pole associated to it even, and be able to add, a set of materials. So this one's pretty simple. I've done ones where there's additional filtering involved to make it easier to find CUs, but I'll place one, and it's nothing fancy. I don't even have a block for it, but I can place it out in space, or I can hover over and I can place it on a transformer or a pole. And notice there's no symbol there, but if I select feature info, I've got my additional material now kind of contained. So if I wanted to build a little more complex rules than what I have just kind of out of the box here is I could say, well, if my additional material is contained by a transformer, here's the list of materials that can only be added for a transformer. Versus this one out in space, could be everything, anything, right? So if I select, and then I can do additional material form. So these are all attributes, of course, but a form makes it nice and easy to do a bunch. And so, I can start typing or I can drop it down. And this is actually pulling from the material catalog. So every CU that's in there. I think I ended up picking a CU there, and it does the description, can type a quantity, status, and I hit OK. If I open up the material editor, go to the bottom, and there's my F116. So it's just a nice thing that I think everyone can really benefit. I think there's a lot of benefit in, having this set up in some ways, because AUD isn't we can't do everything, right? It's usually like we're in the 80-20 or 90-10, right? We're not going to get every situation right. So it's a useful tool to provide, that next level of manual without just double clicking and, having to navigate the catalog. Paul, what's up?
The materials to which you're listed, and you do a reset.
Yeah.
It deletes them.
Yes.
Will this persist?
Oh, it would persist. Yeah, because it's a feature itself. However, editable tracking in the material list, I mean, that's a thing. I'm not sure how many are aware. The setup is kind of it's a little bit tough to get set up, but if you have editable tracking turned on and set up, it'll keep manually added material with not a reset, though. If you did a refresh, and I guess let me explain. This button on the material editor is a refresh or a revalidate. The one up here in the ribbon, which I think we end up getting taken off a lot, is reset. So this button would delete all your added material. Using the additional material feature, since it's actually tied to a feature in the design, they'll stick around. So there's benefit, which is probably why we ended up building that in the first place.